Hi, I'm Alan Ball, and I recently decided to upgrade my old Delta lathe for a new Harvey lathe, and I'm going to take you through that process and let you know what I found out in the process of getting that set up and running. So this is my old Delta lathe. Had it for about 20 years, bought it used of course. It's about 45 years old. But it's been a good lathe. But one of the things I really wanted was a variable speed drive, digital type. And there's the new Harvey lathe over there. We're going to go check that out right about. The first thing I had to do when I received this, of course, is unpackage it. It was very well packaged. Everything arrived in great condition. It's a little bit of work to get it unpackaged. I don't know, you probably can't see there are little slots in here, and all the pieces of the package had this kind of plywood with the trim around it. So when they package it, they pop this together and there's a tab that feeds through here and they just whack it over with a hammer, which is a really nice, convenient way for them to put the thing together. The problem is taking it apart is a bit more work. You got to get a screwdriver underneath these tabs that are bent over and try to straighten them out a little bit, then get your pliers on it, and then once you get it bent out, you got to straighten it flat enough that you can get it through the slot. So it was a bit of work, although it's a one-time thing. Fortunately, you don't have to do it a second time, but it wasn't a lot of fun getting this crate off the main unit. But I got it done. The other thing that was kind of nice though, this has a place for a shelf down below, which is nice. I would hope they would. Down here. I took several pieces of the crate that it came in. It was fairly thin plywood, but I laminated two pieces together. And I went ahead and made a shelf out of that. So I got a free shelf out of the deal. To assemble it, you have to get the legs on it, of course. That's one of the first things. This set of legs, of course, has no structures in between them. You can't just set it on the legs and screw it down. That again was a bit of a challenge. You just lay it on its side on a bit of an angle and try to hold the legs up there. They are not light. And I managed to get a few screws in far enough that I could stand it up. And then once I did that, I could get the rest of the screws in. The two screws behind the head assembly here were not terribly easy to get to. And again, you can turn them maybe 1/8 of a turn at a time. So it took me a while to do that, but again, it's a one-time thing, and I got those in and nice and tight. The one thing I didn't like about it is the paint on it. For something this high-end, I expect a pretty nice paint job, and this paint is very soft. I've got several places where it got pretty scratched up putting the thing together. You can see here the scratches. There's some on some of the other legs. If you can get around there. Same thing down on this one. It's not a baked on paint apparently. I was hoping for something a little nicer than this. I have a feeling over the years it's probably going to need to be repainted at some point. It's a very nice looking unit, but I'm concerned about how many scratches there are after being 1 day old. So I bought the extension table, as you can see, and I've got it. I just spent the last hour lining it. It's really, really close, but it's not perfect. But no matter what I do, this thing will not slide over the edge onto the next piece. So I'm going to have to take this apart and see if I can figure out what's catching on there, but it is really close to being aligned perfectly. So I don't have any idea, but hopefully I'll get this figured out shortly. So I finally got it working. I needed to put a jack stand underneath it and tweak it about a dozen times, but if you get it exactly lined up, it will slide very nicely. Just not a simple thing to set up, but it works great now. So as far as features go, this has a 42-inch length on it. You can turn pretty long pieces on here if you need to. It will handle a 14-inch radius or diameter item here. But for outboard turning, this is really kind of nice. This can handle a 24 inch. It's roughly 12 inches, just over 12 inches from here to here. So you can get a 24 inch object in there if you want to turn something like that. The other thing that's nice about this is that, of course, this is the same spindle, so you can use the same face plates. My older Delta lathe had a separate thread on this. Of course, when you're turning, this is going counterclockwise, this is going clockwise, and you end up needing a left-hand thread or else something screws on, but that uses left-hand threads, so I needed a totally different face plate for that. But this will use the same face plates whether you're doing outboard turning or spindle or whatever in this direction. So a few other nice features on this. The locking levers on this have a brass ball at the end of them so they don't chew into the shaft on your tool rests, things like that. It will keep them in much better condition. Also this, when you turn it in, actually my old lathe, you had to, if you wanted to knock this thing out, you had to screw this all the way out and it would come out, and then you had to put it in a vise, put a dowel rod in there and tap the thing out and knock the end out of it. And this one, if you just turn it into here, that's at 0 and it's pretty clearly marked. If you keep going, it actually ejects this thing for you. It's a very nice feature if you're going to be putting a chuck in here or something like that. So I'm going to fire this guy up. I have a piece from a dead purple plum tree. It's got a bit of a branch sticking out here, but we're going to check this out and see how it works. Speed's great. You can go from 0 up to whatever. This thing is super quiet. Really nice. Well, you can see it stopped a couple times, but all in all it's doing okay. I'm going to get that branch off of there and smooth it out a little more, and then we'll watch further. So I have it almost rounded out now. It's in a lot better shape. I mean, what I started with was very aggressive, which I wanted to do just for worst case kind of scenario. But it still stops a lot when it catches one of these grooves in here. So I can turn it. The motor is rated at 1 horsepower, and they say it can develop up to 3 horsepower for short bursts of time, which is great. I don't know what that period of time is offhand, but it doesn't really matter, because what happens is when you hit something like this that wants to stop it, the belts slip. So I don't care how many horsepower you can generate, if the belts can't handle that kind of load, it just keeps stopping, and that's what's happening. And it did on my old lathe, and it probably does on most. Unless you have a direct drive with no belts, you're going to have that kind of situation. Other than that, it's doing okay though. So you can see it still stops when it hits an obstacle. I'm not real impressed with that. If they're going to have that kind of motor on there, they need to have some better belts. But other than that, it's very quiet, very smooth. It's not a bad lathe. That's my only problem I've found so far, is it would be nice if it could actually deliver a little more power, as opposed to the motor just generating it and the belts can't handle it. There's a lever over here that tightens the belts. That's what this thing does. And I've got this down as tight as I can get it, and I moved the belt to the low speed instead of the high speed. And I'm going to try this thing out again and see if it does any better, or if it's still slipping. As you can see, it's not much better. Still a power issue. One last item is I have had to contact customer service several times on this, and they will eventually respond. They rarely answer the phone, but if you leave a message, they'll get back to you in a couple of business days typically. Not terrible, not great service, but it's okay. The biggest issue I have is it's just really underpowered. It has some really great features, but the horsepower of the motor really means nothing if it can't deliver that power to your workpiece. Here's the belt again. Get in on it. Yeah, I was measuring it. It's on crooked, but that's okay. Anyway, there's the belt. I measured it. It's 0.165 inches wide. It's just a flat belt on the back side that rubs on this thing. I'll have to straighten that out in a little bit. So here's the belt system on my old Delta lathe. It has plenty of power to get it to the load. It has a 3/4 horsepower motor on it. I've never had a power issue with this, but that's a standard V belt. It's much more capable of transmitting power than the little tiny belt on the new Harvey machine. So this lathe has some really great features. I really love the speed control. It's very nice over the older systems. I like the outboard turning. You can use the same faceplate, outboard or spindle turning. It's really nice like that. You have 24 inches for outboard turning, 14-inch diameter for inboard or for spindle, 42-inch length if you get the extension on it. That was a little tricky setting up, but it's okay. Everything works nicely, very smooth. It's a nice machine. It would be nice if it had a little better quality paint on it, but the biggest thing, if you're going to buy this, you just need to understand that the belt system in here is kind of minimal, and you're not going to have good luck turning big stuff on here, I think. We'll see how it goes as I turn more items, but they really need to improve that system, put a better belt on there. Other than that, I hope you've enjoyed this review, and I hope it's helpful to you. Thank you.